Hello, and welcome to ACEP Masterclass, using your social influence to fight for emergency medicine. My name is Mike Panetta, and I'll be leading this training today. A little bit more about my background. I'm a founder and partner at Beekeeper Group, which is a DC-based public affairs, advocacy, and communications firm that specializes in using digital tools to engage target audiences for issue campaigns. My work has been recognized with honors from PR Week, the Public Affairs Council, the American Association of Political Consultants, as well as other groups. I was also a 3-time elected official in the District of Columbia, serving as DC's statehood delegation to Congress. Let's take a few minutes to go over what I hope you'll learn today. My goal is to help you use your voice across digital platforms as an ACEP member or supporter to advance the priorities of emergency physicians. We'll talk about how to use issue messaging and how it can be blended into your own original content. And we're going to talk about how to engage online to amplify allies and counter negative information and trolls, all while keeping the overall mission and policy goals of ACEP in mind. Right now, your voice is needed. Sharing first-person, authentic experiences is what drives social media, and as an emergency physician, you have a lot of authentic experiences to share. During the past 18 months, we've seen how social media can shape and warp opinions and drive actions on a large scale. Just look at vaccine hesitancy as an example. It can be exhausting to combat misinformation or correct well-intended discussions, but the current situation shows how important it is to provide our perspective to these online conversations. As an emergency physician, you have a unique voice, authority, and perspective on key issues, and social media is a great platform to share them. Your work can lead to changes in thoughts and actions. I know it's a challenge, but remember, you're fighting the good fight here, and your activity will have a positive impact on others. The first thing we're going to do is discuss your own social media profiles across these platforms, as this is your main online presence. It's good to start by taking a step back and thinking about your profile and what it says about you, as it will link back from every post or comment that you make. How are you presenting yourself via your profile will lead to snap judgments from people when determining whether you're a source that can be respected and trusted. Some things to keep in mind here are: what are you using for pictures, both on your profile and your background? Do they enhance your authority to speak on issues related to emergency medicine or detract from it? On platforms where you can choose, what is your username or screen name? Something that is related to the field is good to show issue expertise, but don't use ACEP in your username, as you are not speaking for the organization. If you are using something that is off topic, like the dog mom example here on this slide, your first impression isn't going to be one that matches the experience and expertise that you have, and some may discount what you have to say without knowing more about you. Another thing to think about is, do you have ACEP affiliation listed anywhere in your profile? Again, not in your username, but is in your brief bio. If so, is it up to date? Do you have your professional title or place of employment in your profile? Remember, if you have the latter, even if you are not speaking for your employers, you'll be associated with the institution via this information. So please keep that in mind when posting on social media. You can see 3 examples of profiles on this slide. They are all emergency room physicians, but the center one has a different focus, with the title of foodie physician, her credentials, and the background picture of grilled peaches that cast her in a very different light than the other 2 profiles, which are more focused on the topic of emergency medicine. This is not to say the foodie physician wouldn't have relevant things to say or be able to contribute to a discussion about topics related to emergency medicine, but the profile emphasizes other subjects are more important, which is fine if that's the goal. But the key here is not to undermine your own authority to speak on emergency medicine unnecessarily through visuals or other profile information that others may find distracting or take away from your authority. Thinking about the company you keep and who you interact with online, in addition to your friends and family, there are likely other emergency room physicians and people in healthcare in your online and social media circles. Because of this, you play an important role in advancing issues that are important to emergency medicine. You're part of this training because you've already shown leadership on social media and have been active online on key issues. As an online leader, ACEP needs your help. We're looking for you to represent ACEP and its policy positions in places they can't, doing such things as informing group discussions and chats, identifying trolls and toxic behavior, and flagging discussions that warrant ACEP intervention in private groups. Something to keep in mind is that while you're interacting online that no group is really private. What you think is a private conversation in a closed group or text messages amongst friends is just a screen grab away from going viral. This is especially true in today's climate as the pandemic has broken down the trust between the healthcare profession and the general public. And while you may only be venting frustrations amongst peers, your comments will be seen very differently by patients and others, which can really undermine our efforts. Next, we're going to talk about how to create content to amplify our message. You already know you have unique voice as an emergency room physician. We're talking about ways to have that unique perspective show through in the content that you create and post. And when we talk about content, it's not just your posts, but it's also your comments and your other interactions online. Things that can be tied back to your own social media profiles, which we talked about earlier in this presentation. You were encouraged to use your own voice and bring in real-world experiences and stories to your content, but it's important to stay on message and align with ACEP's policy priorities as much as possible. This is where a messaging matrix can be a good thing to reference. This slide shows a subset of an ACEP messaging matrix, focusing on actions and next steps for ensuring comprehensive and consistent emergency medicine residency training. In this example, combining some of these suggested actions with original content from you in your voice that references some of your own experiences would be very powerful content in advancing our policy priorities. Using a messaging matrix allows for diverse content, but it keeps everyone on the same message and provides a North Star for policy asks. Next thing I want to talk about is the power of stories. Wrapping a message in a story is very powerful. Stories take advantage of a concept known as narrative transportation, which is when you lose yourself in a story and begin to emphasize with its characters. There are scientific studies that show that when people are engaged in a story, their attitudes and perceptions change to mimic those of the protagonist in the story. This is a very powerful tool when it comes to working in issue advocacy. This works because stories affect a different part of the brain than fact-based arguments. Stories trigger feelings and emotions which guide decisions and actions. Stories get around our natural defensive reaction to avert attempts to persuade us, serving as almost as a Trojan horse to change opinions and drive change. As an emergency physician, you have stories that can advance the profession. There are ways for you to embrace the stories that you have, but still protect your patient's privacy. For a deeper dive on this, I recommend the Mastering the Art of Storytelling from ACEP's PR in the ER series. Social media content, we like to say that it's important to create thumb-stopping moments, meaning you are working to stop and capture the attention of people mindlessly scrolling through their feeds. And you need compelling content to do that, something that resonates with the target audience and captures their attention. The competition for attention across social media is brutal, with torrents of content and shrinking attention spans. Social media is a very visual form of communications. Photos, videos, infographics, memes are used extensively. The top performing content across all platforms is video. So we encourage you to think about ways that you can use it to advance ACEP's policy priorities and use your own stories to do so. There's a level of authenticity to individual stories and content that you can produce that ACEP cannot, as that content needs to be more official and polished. You can also be active on emerging platforms where ACEP doesn't have a presence. But be sure to tag ACEP in what you produce, and if appropriate, it can be reposted on the official channels so your creativity can reach a broader audience. I like to show this slide because it shows the shrinking attention span that people have. And as emergency physicians, you already know this. But these attention spans have been shrinking and continue to shrink. People do not focus very long, especially on social media. So this is important to keep your content short. It also shows that you don't need a lot of time to make something. A TikTok video, an Instagram video, or a tweet, these can be produced very quickly, and then they can be shared by ACEP or by others across social media. Another quick statistic here to reinforce why visual media is so important on social media. We talked about creating content to get people to pay attention. To remember, visual content has the greatest impact as people remember so much more of what they see as opposed to what they read or what they hear. So how can you take your content to the next level? But you can start by getting creative with how you share your experiences and stories. Use photos or other visual media to enhance your posts. More people will see it, more people will remember it, and it will have higher engagement rates across platforms. The vertical video formats, like the one shown as an example on this slide, on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok, are popular and are very often used to relay first person stories and share experiences. Mentioning other users in ACEP through tagging or other platform specific ways, or using hashtags, can amplify your content to larger audiences. Attention spans are short, but longer text based stories can be broken down into segments on platforms like Twitter using threads or as multiple posts on Instagram. There are also free and easy to use resources like Canva and other tools for creating and enhancing your own media. This graphic is an example of a Twitter thread where a longer story from an emergency physician is broken down into smaller sections and posted as multiple tweets. Each segment of the story becomes its own piece of social media and serves as a hook to drive interested readers back to the full thread. These screenshots are some examples of video content on Instagram and TikTok from emergency physicians. They are using first-person perspectives and talking directly to the viewer. This is a popular format used on Instagram Reels, Facebook Stories, YouTube Shorts, and TikTok videos. There's a lot of creativity out there among your physician peers. I encourage you to find and follow a few to get a sense of what they are doing and get your own ideas and think about how you could possibly use these formats to advance ACEP's policy goals. Another form of creative content are memes. I'm sure you've seen similar images in your own social media feeds. They are funny and usually take advantage of some known element of pop culture or other common touchpoint to drive home a point. They can be funny and snarky, but they do shape opinions about a topic, and they are easily shared and reposted on social media. Now, I know what you're thinking. I'm an emergency physician, not a graphic designer. How can I create better content when I'm not an expert or have the time to become one? Obviously, these skills are not part of your job. So on this slide, I wanted to share a few tools that you can use to create content and take your content to the next level, including Canva, Animoto, and some meme generators. Also, most of the social platforms that you use already have ways to edit your content with effects, text overlays, additional graphics. So you already have some of these tools built into what you're using already. The idea here is to take things to the next level with some additional efforts to make content more visually compelling and, as we said before, thumb-stopping. When talking about content, I wanted to make sure to touch on comments, as that's where so much of the conversation happens on social media. Commenting and engaging with posts typically boost views due to the platform's algorithms being designed to show engaging and active content to others. So keep this in mind when deciding to engage online. Comments offer a number of ways to get ACEP's core messages into the conversation. There are 3 ways to engage with a comment thread. 1. Provide supporting stories, comments, facts, and other materials to back up an original post if it's in line with ACEP's policy priorities and objectives. This engagement reinforces the original post and boosts views of this content across the platform. The second way is to pivot a conversation to bring in ACEP's policy perspectives, messages, and other materials on relevant posts or shared news stories. This works well when a topic is being discussed and you have the opportunity to inform the discussion using ACEP policy priorities and messages combined with your own personal experience. The third way is correcting misinformation or providing a counter argument to negative comment threads. This is where you can shine some light in a discussion and bring in ACEP's perspective as a counterbalance to what is being posted or discussed. There's so much misinformation out there, so it's important for us to take the opportunity to tap it down. Next, let's talk about allies and trolls online. Starting with allies, it's important to amplify your supporters. Being proactive in supporting positive content and materials is as important as tapping down negative or misleading posts. Getting content that is in line with ACEP's messaging and policy priorities in front of our target audience requires everyone to play a role. You can amplify this content through sharing, liking, and commenting on posts and comments. Your efforts to support other emergency physicians and supporters will grow the community and counter the rising networks of disinformation. Your work here will go a long way to spreading ACEP's key messages. Next, let's talk about trolls. There's a difference between trolls and professional disagreements or discussions on a topic. Trolls are online actors that only want to get a reaction and cause chaos. They thrive on attention. How do you know when you're dealing with a troll? There's a few bullets here to explain it. First, they'll try to make you angry. Getting under your skin is the point. They act entitled. They are entitled to make you listen to their opinion, to express their views in any way they want, and have an overall superiority complex. They also exaggerate and go to extreme scenarios with their arguments almost immediately. They'll make things personal and will attack those who disagree with them on a personal basis. And lastly, they often can't spell, have poor grammar, and are generally lack the ability to make cohesive arguments. These are the type of things you should look for when you're interacting with somebody online to get a sense of whether or not they want to have a true engagement with you or are just looking to get a reaction. So, how do you handle them? You're dealing with issues that are related to healthcare, and that can attract all kinds of people, even in the private groups you belong to. Sooner or later, you'll come across a toxic presence. Some tips on how to deal with them. First, use the platform's policy to your advantage and remind an offending user of your own policy if you are managing a group or a private discussion. Don't get baited and feed the trolls. They crave that attention. When there's a blatant falsehood that can't go unchecked, respond with facts and relevant stories, if possible, to educate others in the group or thread, reinforcing the standards of discussion. Remember that ignoring and blocking them is always an option. That deprives them of the oxygen they need to interact with others. And if you see something that needs a response from ACEP, please escalate it and bring it to the attention of the appropriate contact. A few additional thoughts here. Be sure you follow a platform's community guidelines. It can be easy to get baited or escalate a discussion where you become the troll. So keep that in mind when you're interacting with others online. Utilize the platform's reporting tools to ban a user in extreme measures. Most social media platforms have appropriate use policies, and if you have a troll that's violating them, don't be afraid to escalate it to the next level. And remember, social media is not the emergency room. Most comments don't need an immediate reaction or attention. Taking a breath, walking away for an hour or two or even longer is perfectly fine before crafting a response. Not everything needs that immediate attention. Some parting thoughts as we wrap up today. Remember, you are in a powerful position to advance issues important to emergency medicine. Don't undermine your own authority with how you present yourself online, through your profile pictures or other things you have on your social media profiles. You have a unique voice and the stories to share that can change hearts and minds, but remember to stay on message and advocate for ACEP's policy priorities. Social media is where these critical conversations are happening, and you can represent the profession and advance our goals through your engagement. On social media, your content needs to be compelling to get attention, so don't be afraid to be more creative with your posts and your messages. ACEP needs your help to advance factual messages and combat misinformation online. Thank you for your time and attention. I hope you'll be able to use some of what you've learned today as you engage online on behalf of emergency medicine.